Okay, I got an email the other day. A student asked, what is a roof rail? And that's a good question. We have, this is an estimate form, and it has all the parts of a car listed here. So we want to know, what's the difference between, let's say, a quarter and a fender. And you might ask the same question. Sometimes people confuse a fender with a bumper. But right here is the one we want to talk about today. What is a roof rail? So let's show you what that looks like. And this is a common car that's in most countries. This is a Ford Taurus. And this area that we're talking about right here is the roof rail. You can see back here is a better view of it. Notice that this strip right here is the identifying mark. If you see that strip on a car, then you know that that car probably has what we call a unified rail. In a moment I'll show you one that doesn't. But you can also tell by the way that this door opens. The door opens right here. This is the edge of the door, and it won't open this part right here. That's one way of telling. And here you can see another way of telling is that there's a split right here between the rail and the fender. And so you can tell that that's definitely not going to open with the door because that's actually part of the windshield pillar. This is the windshield pillar, we call it right here. But it also, again, this car has a clear molding right here. There's a molding between them. That's generally, if there is a roof rail, this little area right here, if there is a molding there, there's going to be a roof rail. Now this is an 07 Maxima, and it does have the rail. But what's interesting is they haven't had the rails all that long. Here's an 01 Maxima that does not have rails. Let me show you how we know. Right now there's no split between the door and the fender. There's also really no molding up here. You see that there's some kind of a line there, but that's just the weather strip. When you open this door, it's just open. So there's no split. This car has no rail. And the other way, I don't necessarily have a back view of this, but right here is the quarter panel, which is this piece right here, blends into the roof, and there's some kind of there's no seam between the two. And so if a person had to paint this roof, they'd also have to paint the quarter, and that'd be a real challenge for them. But that's a way for you to identify this car does not have rails, and so you would not put them on your estimate. And now I'm going to come back to this picture and talk about the unified rail a little bit more, because why do we call it a unified? Well, it's because it encompasses this whole quarter right here and this piece all the way up the roof, and it also goes all the way down here inside the door, what we call the hinge pillar for the front door, and as well this area right here. And a matter of fact, it also encompasses the rockers. Down here we call this the rockers. So when you look at that, that's what you call a unified. So if you can picture this with no door on it, no doors at all, you'd see this one piece. And when they build the car, it's the quarter, the inside hinge pillar here, or the latch pillar here, and the hinge pillar here, and this area up here, which we actually call the cowl, but some people call it the front door hinge pillar, and that's okay too. But when you build a car like that, it makes it real strong, super sturdy. It also saves money, and so that's why they do it. But when they form this section up here, what we call the rail, when they form that, they typically form it using hydroform technology, and so there's no access, there's no holes on the back side of it that you could get inside. That's not always the case, but 90% of the time you can't get to the back side, and you are going to have to use glue pull. You'll have to pull them out with the glue puller. Okay, so we talked about what is a rail, and you can see there's a rail as mentioned here. Now it's actually a good thing for us to talk about what's the left side of the car and what's the right side of the car. Okay, what's left and what's right? Well, if you're sitting inside the car, this is the left side and this is the right. So the passenger side in American cars is considered the right side. The driver's side is considered the left side in American cars. But either way, whether you're talking about a car with left-hand drive or right-hand drive, see, it doesn't matter. It's how you sit in the car. That's the orientation of it. So if you're talking about the left side, how you sit in the car, where is your left hand versus where is your right hand? Okay, so now you know the left from your right. Another common mistake that's made is, what is a fender and what is a quarter? There is a difference. Typically, the fender is always going to be on the front, whereas the quarter panel is always going to be in the rear. And sometimes we use the abbreviation QTR. So whether it has a rail or not, this is the quarter panel. So there is a difference, and if you want to look like an expert, you want to know the difference between a fender and a quarter. Now, one common thing that happens is people get confused and they'll call this is a bumper. And you can see in this car back here, this has a bumper as well. But cars, people would get confused and they would call the bumper the fender and vice versa. But the bumper is different from the fender. The fender goes on the side of the car, whereas the bumper, it goes in the front, or again in the rear. But this is a quarter panel, and this is a fender. So you can see that the way this estimate is designed, it's designed to do the tops of the panels, starting with the hood, then the roof, then the trunk, or the deck lid. That's another name for trunk. Then you go around the left side of the car, starting at the back. Look at the roof rail if it's there. Go around the side of the front. On the right side, you're still walking around the car. And then the last thing is the right roof rail. Now, some cars have a sunroof that's metal. Most of them are glass nowadays. But here's something you might wonder, what is cowl and other? It could be anything right there. But typically this section right here of a car behind the hood is called the cowl. Now some cars have a cowl panel. For example, this Jeep Wrangler has a clear difference between where the hood raises and lowers. So if you raise the hood, you wouldn't take this area with you right here. So you can tell there's a separation between the two, and in fact there's a separation right here. It's actually, I think it's a welded on piece, might be bolted on. But that's kind of a tough area to fix. You can fix them. Many cars today don't have cowls, but the Jeep Wrangler is one of them, and the Ford Ranger is another. And the way you can tell again is that line between the two sections. Sometimes they'll put little squirters in there. Sometimes the antenna will be mounted in there. So that is the cowl. And if it's not there, you don't need to worry about it. Now there's one more thing I want to mention to you, and that is that, of course, we're looking at this right quarter, right? I want to see if you're paying attention. Of course, that's the left side right there, right? Left. And what I want to mention to you is that sometimes you'll hear people use the term sail panel. That's this section right here. And we don't use it a whole lot because, of course, we're talking about the roof rail, the quarter panel, and all that. Let's say you have a car without a roof rail. Well, now it kind of becomes important because what we call the sail panel, this area right in through here, can be difficult to access. You know, if you took the taillight out and you tried to go into a natural hole right here to get to a dent, it could be pretty tough. And so if we talk about the sail panel, that's the little area we're talking about here, really. You might even tighten it up. It's the area sort of between the top of the back glass and the bottom of the back glass. That right there. And then one more thing people say sometimes, especially body shop guys, they'll say this is where we're talking about a dog leg, and that's the section right here, this right here. And of course that's real tough if you get a dent in there because it's just so narrow. But that's called the dog leg, and why they use that term, I think, because it is shaped like a dog leg. But that's another term that I've heard. If you've heard of some other terms as far as car parts go, be sure and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks for watching.